Can No Fap really give people more motivation? Believe it or not, there's actually a scientific basis behind No Fap. But first, let's understand that motivation can be simplified into 3 steps: motive, effort, and reward. Let's say you want to eat a nice dinner. The motive is wanting to eat that nice dinner. The effort is the time and the work to create the meal, and the reward is when you actually get to eat it. In this video, we're going to be using this model and looking at a chemical in the brain called dopamine. Experiment 1. An experiment was done with a group of monkeys. When a light turns on, if they push a button 10 times, they are rewarded with food. Pushing the button is the effort, and food is both the motive and the reward. The interesting thing was that when the light turned on, the monkeys' dopamine levels rose instantly. The dopamine levels stayed very high throughout the effort phase and only dropped when the actual food was received. The key takeaway is that the dopamine levels rose when the motive began and continued through the effort part, and that it has nothing to do with pleasure. The second experiment is with rats. A bunch of rats are given 2 corridors to go down. The first has no obstacles and a small pile of food at the end. The second corridor has a tiny fence but an even larger amount of food. The rats were affected so that some had artificially high levels of dopamine, meanwhile others had artificially low levels of dopamine. The result? The rats with higher dopamine were willing to go over the fence to get the higher amount of food. Thus, they were more motivated. The rats with less dopamine all chose the easier path. The researcher concluded with this quote: "Low levels of dopamine make people and other animals less likely to work for things. So it has more to do with motivation and cost-benefit analysis than pleasure itself." So how does this actually relate to No Fap? Watching porn gives us so much dopamine that if you watch enough porn, your brain starts to change. It starts to compensate in order to make those high levels of dopamine that you are regularly receiving normal. This makes normal levels of dopamine, which we get from regular life, actually lower. Let's bring this back to the idea of making a meal while using the 2 experiments. From the monkey experiment, we know that dopamine is released as soon as the motive starts. So as soon as you consider the idea of making that nice meal, your dopamine will kick in. But instead of a normal amount of dopamine, watching porn has made it so you receive far less. You are now similar to the artificially altered rats with lower dopamine and lowered motivation. Instead of putting in more effort to receive that higher reward, you might just order pizza because no actual effort is required. And here's the amazing thing about No Fap. You begin to starve your brain of dopamine by quitting porn. Eventually, you begin to get normal levels of dopamine, and with it, your motivation levels return. And in a world where there are so many guys watching porn or doing the many other activities that raise their dopamine, it's an amazing way to get ahead. Making a meal is just one simple example. Going to the gym, starting a company, cleaning your room, waking up early. Almost everything we do starts with a motive, takes some effort, and eventually you accomplish something. Give No Fap a try, test yourself, and begin to feel this new motivation every single day. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the next video in the No Fap series, hit subscribe, and thanks for watching.